Hi and welcome to Westeros.org's video review for episode 7, The Broken Man. It is, as you will notice, somewhat delayed, and this is because I haven't really had much of a voice for most of the week, and I'm sure you can hear, I'm still not all there. I will be fighting my way through it, but excuse any coughs and strange sounds. I'm definitely not trying to do any vocal frying here. It is just that my throat is really fried at the moment, and there's all sorts of strange lumps in it that I have to constantly swallow down, and yeah, more than you wanted to know probably. But anyway, episode 7, and the usual little spoiler alert. Well, there is a big reveal of sorts, a character reveal. For some fans it will be a confirmation of something that they didn't realize. For others it will be, yeah, we were right about that. So there's a certain element of spoiler with this episode, though if you followed anything around it, it's probably been very hard to avoid exactly what that spoiler is. Oh, sorry.
Trying to get some silence here.
I know. So I thought I would dive right into dealing with the surprise of the episode, or, however surprising it is for you, because what it is that the Hound is back. He's not in fact dead, and, well, I never thought that he was in the books, certainly. I knew that the grave digger was Sandor. Even if the Hound was dead, Sandor Clegane wasn't. And I didn't expect them to have the route be so different on the show that he would actually be dead. So not a surprise as such, but they obviously try to play it up as such. They start with a cold open to hide the fact that Rory McCann's name is in the credits. And it kind of, hypes it up a bit more than I think it deserves, because this is the big part of the episode, and I personally found it rather underwhelming. And I do have to start off by saying that I'm biased a bit in this regard, in that even in the books, I can't say that, the Hound is a favorite character of mine, or even a character that I find myself very interested in. I don't get the Hound as a badass fighter, as in, I'm not really enthralled by that arc of his, and I certainly don't subscribe to the idea of the Clegane Bowl, so I'm not excited about that being a possibility, because I don't think it's going to happen, at least not in the books, and no, I don't think it's going to happen on the show either, so sorry. I'm also, I find the whole San thing completely and utterly baffling, and, to some extent apparently it does George, because, he's commented like there are people who like, the Hound and Theon and find them to be romantic characters. Yes, things can obviously take on a life outside of what the author intends, but in this case I'm, with the author. He's not my kind of bad boy, don't really get him, so yeah. Anyway, in this case we find him in the Riverlands, somewhere I think it's supposed to be, and there's construction of a sept going on, and there's all these people around, and it's a bit mystifying where these people are supposed to come from. I've seen some descriptions saying that, oh, he's ended up with some sort of religious commune out in the middle of nowhere, but well, no, it is actually supposed to be, they're actually supposed to be villagers. I know this somehow, but there's no sign of a village. Obviously the budget didn't cover building a village in this case, so they're just building a sept in the middle of nowhere, which is not really how you do it. But anyway, I think that, they don't really do enough with the Hound as a broken man as such. There's a little bit of him sort of wondering, why is he back? Excuse me for a moment there. Why haven't the gods punished him? And, the Septon tells him that, well, they have, and I think it should have been played up more. It should have been more than just one episode, because as it is, it comes out rather predictable on the whole, because in the second segment we've got these riders coming up. And, you know, they're from the Brotherhood apparently. And you kind of get a sense that something's, once the Hound goes off into the woods, I don't think, sorry, that you can really doubt what is going to happen. That's not a bad, that's a bad sign. They've been there sort of examining what's going to happen, and then, or the situation with the camp and who are there and what they have. Then he goes off, the only one who's willing to fight apparently, and when he comes back, they're all dead, and he immediately takes up the axe again to go off and get vengeance. So there's a very short arc for the Hound here, being the I've given up on fighting, and you know, even when he just talking to the Septon played by Ian McShane, he's saying that, you know, won't you fight to defend yourself? And so the whole angle that he's done with his past life, it's not very convincing and doesn't really play out very strongly for me. I was also quite this will unfortunately be a recurring incident. I'm very sorry about that. Ian McShane as the Septon, well, you know, he's good at giving speeches, but the speech that they gave him pales in comparison to the speech given by the characters in the novel Septon Meribald, and he's supposed to be kind of a combination of, you know, Septon Meribald and the elder brother who nursed Sander back to health and such. Yeah, you know, they had this great material from the books, and they could have gotten at least closer to it, I think, and used that. But no one said they write something entirely new, and I just didn't feel it was at all convincing when compared to that. So that was underwhelming. And logistically speaking, I also thought it was a little weird when the Hound gets back and finds everyone slaughtered by the Brotherhood. I mean, is the Brotherhood, you know, slaughtering people, or are they raising the countryside against the Freys? There seems to be a bit of a discrepancy here, so I'm guessing we're going to find out more about that. Maybe there's been a split like there's been in the novels or something along those lines. But if it was just those three guys, for example, those villagers were really, really, really sucky at defending themselves, because it looked like there were a lot of them, and, you know, somebody ought to have been able to throw some potatoes at them or something. But anyway, it was the big thing of the episode, and while the acting is good from Rory McCann and Ian McShane, it's underwhelming compared to what it could have been. Moving on to King's Landing, we find out that, yes, Marjorie was faking her conversion. When she's talking to Olenna, she manages to slip her a little piece of paper where she's drawn a Tyrell rose to show that she's still a Tyrell at heart, not halfway to becoming a Septa or something like that. It's now that we know that she was faking it, I think that the way that they're playing, you know, meek Marjorie is kind of closer to how almost they should be portraying Cersei, at least if you looked at the books. On the other hand, they haven't really ever looked at the books when it comes to Cersei, so yeah. But that kind of playing along with the game would seem to be more right for her as well, to be honest. But now, you know, she's got her big scary guard, and as long as she's in the Red Keep, she seems to feel fairly confident. But the Marjorie High Sparrow thing, that bit works out fine, and now it's kind of interesting that they give him a bit more of the sort of anti-women and the very patriarchal side of the character that comes out very strongly in the novels, but which really hasn't been part of Jonathan Pryce's portrayal of the character so far. But now he's talking about, well, you know, you really should be sleeping with your husband, and you don't need to enjoy it as a woman. You just need to, you know, be patient and think of Westeros, basically. So it's interesting that they're showing that side. And hey, it wasn't a speech; it was a conversation. So perfectly fine with that. Then we get a Olenna Cersei scene, which I don't really enjoy those for obvious reasons, like not really enjoying either actress very much at all. Olenna is so one note, and here I don't know if we're supposed to be having a sincere Cersei who is telling Olenna that they really need to work together, but that would be a scary idea actually if she was sincere, so I do hope that isn't the case. I suppose she's perfectly capable of trying to keep a nice face to Olenna, and although she does seem a bit taken aback by Olenna's response that she's not biting, which is a bit curious because she knows Olenna by now, but Olenna is planning to hightail out of there and thinks that Cersei should do the same, which she's not going to abandon her son. So something is clearly being set up here. There's going to be some kind of confrontation and the pieces are moving into place in King's Landing, but it's still difficult to judge exactly what's going to be happening. Olenna is probably taking off, as she said. Usually when we hear that from a character, they are going to be somewhere else the next episode. But the Marjorie and Cersei situation, and obviously there's still going to be some more use for her little guard dog as well. And we're off to the north, where a rash of teleporting takes Jon and the gang from the Gift to Bear Island to Deepwood Motte and some campsite somewhere, all in one episode. The north is kind of big, guys, but yes, I know. No attention being paid to that, but it's still kind of silly that they do this sort of compression. And anyway, Jon's going around convincing various forces to join up. Although for the most part it's other people doing the convincing in each scene. In the talk with the wildlings, it ends up being Tormund. Makes sense, he talks about how Jon died for them, and fine, okay. So he gets those along, and then they're off to Bear Island, where the star of the scene really is the actress playing Lyanna Mormont, who does a very fine job, I think, as the 10-year-old lady of her house. And I think that the problem with the scene is, well, there's a few sort of problems with how they decide to try and persuade her. Once again, Jon is having to leave over to, or Jon and Sansa really, they try, both of them, and then they leave over to Davos to solve the situation, and it makes no more sense now than when I started complaining about Davos being put into these roles. He's not a northerner. He really wouldn't have the ear of the northerners, no matter how he's being the sensible man who's able to draw parallels to his own existence and what have you. It just doesn't work like that. Not even with 10-year-old girls. They also left out things that they could have used, like the fact that not only did Jorah Mormont intend, make Jon his steward and intend for him to succeed him as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, he also gave him the ancestral sword of the family. Where's Longclaw? Why isn't that being shown off? And then there's of course the anti Jon part that really should have been raised in some of these conversations. How about that bit when you were Lord Commander and then you weren't? Oh, you died and were resurrected. They're really just treating it like a nothing thing. And then we're on to Deepwood Motte, and there we get to meet Percy. Well, Lord Glover, but he's Percy to me, having watched entirely too much Blackadder. It was fun to see him, even if he didn't seem to enjoy the visitors at all, but his complaint is again only about the wildlings being part of the army. He has no problem with Jon having essentially deserted the Night's Watch, but they don't get any men there. So then they're off to the last stop for the episode, which is a campsite. Sansa thinks that they should be getting more men by going on to Castle Cerwyn, but apparently they have run out of teleporting juice, so none of that. They don't have time to get there. And that kind of just underlines how false this tension that they're building up between Jon and Sansa is, because Sansa is acting, I mean, in her interactions with the lords that they're trying to persuade, she's being very combative, and she's being, with Jon, quite combative and even petulant, I would say. And if that's their idea of her being strong and decisive, I think they've got a bad idea of that. And yes, she's been through an awful lot, but this is not a great arc for the character that they're setting up right now, and it just feels weird, this sort of tension that they are trying to work up between her and Jon. And, you know, she's questioning Braavos, and yes, I'm questioning Braavos as Jon's advisor too, but you know, being childish and saying, oh, well, you know, he was advisor to Stannis, and Stannis doesn't even have a head. It feels like a very, like, 12-year-old thing to do. Actually, no, not 12-year-old, because Lyanna Mormont is 10, so it's probably an 8-year-old or something like that. And then, you know, at the end, she goes off and starts writing a letter, and I think we can all guess who she is writing a letter to. And is she going to tell anything to Jon about that? I'm kind of dubious, and I really don't like the way they're setting up things between Jon and Sansa, and how they are mashing things together in the North storyline just to get people where they need them for, you know, the finale. Riverrun does look quite nice, actually. That's some nice work on getting that castle to look really impressive. I'm less enamored with the idea of being back with Jaime and Bronn, but maybe in small doses I can take it. I suppose Bronn's comments about the, you know, being a better military mind than the Lannister army is like saying he's got a bigger cock than anyone in the Unsullied army. I suppose that's funny enough. Although it's interesting how it's like the Unsullied army, like that's some sort of one entity, and also Jaime really doesn't think very highly about the Lannister army. I mean, I would have hoped that Tywin would actually have some, you know, left the army with somewhat better commanders and people in place than that Jaime seems to credit them with. But I guess doesn't have much respect for the military. The whole scenario with Jaime and the Freys, and sort of questioning how they've, you know, been dealing with the situation with Edmure, and then his confrontation with the Blackfish, does use a lot of the material from the book 4 in this case. So we've really sort of traveled back in time here with everything else that's been going on. So that's probably the most book material they've used in quite a while. But it was a bit weird that they had the idea of a single combat between Jaime and the Blackfish. Bronn, you know, they bring it up beforehand between Bronn and Jaime, but then when he actually confronts the Blackfish, it would have been much better to just have it there and have the Blackfish blow him off. I mean, they've got his attitude to Jaime being pretty much dead on, so why not have that element there rather than just putting it... obviously, yes, they wanted it there beforehand, so Bronn will have a few more things to say and some more jokes to make. This is not a good reason to change things around. But anyway, there we are, and we're going to see how the Riverrun situation plays out in, you know, the next few episodes, or however much time they give it. It's, you know, nothing that knocked my socks off, but it was nice to see a bit of more book material. And look who already got to Volantis. It's Yara and Theon. in a brothel no less. A little insensitive of Yara, even if she does apologize after a while, but apparently she just can't help herself because she really likes the ass on those prostitutes in Volantis. So yes, I guess Yara is bisexual or a lesbian. Okay. I guess that means she can marry Danny now? I have no idea why they decided this. It's kind of a bit of stereotyping, to be honest, that she's this, badass female fighter leader among the Ironborn, and apparently that means she has to like tits, because otherwise the other Ironborn wouldn't think much of her or something. Except in the fact that, of course, in the novels, she really seems to like the D instead. Likes the pretty D, or at least pretty faces, but, just because you like pretty boys does not mean you are a lesbian or bisexual, thank you very much, but that's the case here. Finally, we're off to Braavos to hook up with Arya again, and she is trying to buy passage on a ship to Westeros. She gets offered some room in steerage. Yeah, okay, I looked that one up since I had to translate it, and it's even worse when you translate it into Swedish because it makes it very clear that it requires the sort of ships that are not really available at this time. It's used in the sense of accommodations on a ship. We're talking 1804 for that word, and it's just the idea of that sort of accommodation on ships of this period is just silly. I mean, it's a really minor point, but the language matters when you're talking about these things. Getting people to feel that they're in a cohesive time period. So yeah, just silly. And then the other thing, they say that or she overhears the man saying that the Ironborn are in Slaver's Bay. So either between those two scenes, they got to Slaver's Bay, or they have decided that Volantis is in fact in Slaver's Bay. Yeah. I guess we can just compress the map and then we can move cities and anything to get people exactly where we need them, the time where we need them, and, just throw realism out the window and let's not be stuck with any problems lining storylines up. You can just imagine, poor Martin sitting at home there trying to piece things together, because that's been big problem with the last books. How do you pull together these disparate storylines? How do you line everything up time-wise? And he has to do it the good old way, more or less realistically. Yes, he can fudge things here and there, and then some sucker on a forum finds out and writes a long article about how this doesn't line up. But on the show, they just say, "Fuck it! Throw it out the window." Yeah. Anyway, Arya goes back home, I guess, from wherever home is, after booking her passage, or telling the captain that they're going to be sailing at dawn, just dropping some money in front of him, and apparently he will now, she's essentially bought his ship or something, I guess. It's a bit weird that she get that much input just from dropping a little money in front of him, but anyway. And then she gets, talked to by an old woman, and it turns out that the old woman is in fact the waif, and she is stabbing Arya. So that whole setup with Arya sitting in the dark room waiting for the waif, I guess she just did that for a little bit, and then she decided, nah, I need to go out here, I can't sit around here waiting for her to show up and stab me, I'll just go out and get stabbed instead. And it'll be interesting to see how she survives those multiple gut wounds, but I certainly expect that she will, but that was quite a lot of stabbing that the waif did. So, overall, this episode, what do I think of it? Well, I think I landed around 6 arrows. No spins this time, actually, so it's, not as offensive as some of the previous episodes have been, but there weren't really any heights for me, because the whole Hound section not really gripping me in the way that they decided to play it out over just a single episode, and with the fallout being so obviously telegraphed. And there were a lot of little problems with how they get people into position, how they get things to happen by having people act in whatever way the plot demands, as opposed to in a way that is natural for the character to act. So that just continuously drags it down and holds it at a relatively low level, even if there weren't any huge holes in the ground of bad quality this time. And the next episode, actually first, of course, I should give you my thoughts on spoilers in this episode. Well, the Hound is obviously returning in the books, so I mean, he is back in the books as well. Is he going to fall back into his, old ways? Yes, probably. There's going to be something that forces him into that. I think and hope that it will play out in a way that is more rewarding than what they did here. That there will be some more pathos to seeing the fact that he had attempted to abandon the Hound and become Sandor Clegane, but that he's not able to escape his past, maybe as long as he's on the Quiet Isle, but how long is he going to be the Quiet Isle for? That's the thing with everything that's going on around him. So there are probably parallels there. Theon and Yara being in Volantis, maybe Slaver's Bay. They're basically having her sort of take the role of Victarion, of coming ahead of Euron, except not on Euron's side. And there's obviously going to, she said that, they're going off to ally themselves with Dany, and whether it's going to be a marriage proposal or not, I don't know. Wouldn't rule it out at this point. But that's where I don't see anything at all like that in the cards for Yara, or for Asha rather. Asha and Yara being two completely separate characters at this point, most definitely. And Arya being stabbed by someone from the House of Black and White, or attempted assassination from the House of Black and White because she's not following orders. I don't know, I still think that she's not really going to be abandoning the path of being a faithless man, but maybe. I think this is just this particular part of it, though. I'm dubious that we're going to see. We don't have this angle of her having an arch enemy in the waif either. They've played the waif up as an enemy just because Arya needs an enemy, whereas that's not really the case at all in the novels. She's just making life difficult for her because that's part of becoming a faithless man. But anyway, that's what I managed this week, and again, apologies for a little coughing here and there and my voice sounding funny. Hopefully, it will be more or less back to normal by the time I'll be tackling episode 8, no 1. But this is a long-term one, so can't promise anything, but until then.